today with the JourneyŌM team. Nico and Susan, how are you today?
We're doing great.
Doing really good.
Yes, thank you.
How about you?
Lovely, beautiful winter day here
Happy
in
to be here with
Colorado.
you. Yeah, we're here
Yeah.
in Santa Barbara, California today.
Beautiful. Is that home?
No,
Well,
we'll explain
wherever
to
we
you,
go
but
is home these days.
we are traveling full time as part of our mission in our
That's
RV.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, and Santa Barbara is a lovely place to land. I assume you've bumped into the District 216 people out there.
Yeah, we are.
Amen. Yes.
It's
Shout out
actually
to them.
District 216 is one of our major partner. So
That's
we
right. Yeah.
we
We have more to
provide
say about our relationship with
yeah
them.
we provide our concierge service to the District 216 members. So, yeah.
And in fact, tonight
And we are talking at District 216
Yeah.
tonight on the panel. So yeah, there you go.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. I got to spend a bunch of time with both of them at the recent Las Vegas Remind conference, and I really,
That's
Yeah.
right.
really loved my time with them, and excited to potentially do events there in the future myself. So great work
Oh, it's
being
great.
there.
Great. Yeah, we had dinner with Jacob the other night, and he was saying great things about you.
Oh, lovely. So let's talk at a high level about this JourneyŌM project. What are you two up to, and then we can start digging into you two as individuals.
Yeah,
Sure.
so much.
So we started JourneyŌM a couple of years ago. After I had several years of wonderful healing with psychedelics, I dealt previously with a lot of mental health issues, depression, PTSD, and so on. And I found really great healing through those modalities. And then we decided through a couple of journeys, I saw the need for this type of service, and we had been concierge in the past and really loved that work. So we decided to start JourneyŌM to help people get access to safe practitioners in the space. So our shtick is around healing, and so we started that
And
about
reducing risk.
and reducing risk. So we started that about a year and a half ago, and we have now close to 100 practitioners in our network around the country, and
That we've vetted.
and we have a pretty high threshold of vetting, and our vetting include in-person visits to the practitioners. So we decided a year and a half ago to sell everything we own and move into our RV and travel the country as part of our mission to go and visit all these practitioners.
Which, as you know, probably is a very unique approach. We don't know of anybody else that's taking it to that extent, to that level.
That's right.
But it's very important to us. It has been since the inception. It was a critical part of what we do. And we could say more about that later.
Yeah.
That in-person experience with the guides in the space where they do their journeys. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. The idea of over 100 facilitators is really impressive, and I know some people doing it with like 2 to 4 facilitators, but not at this scale with this level of kind of I'm assuming geographic availability too. I find that
Yeah.
really impressive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We're in about 34 states right now. We wanted that not only for geographic availability, but more so for the variety of experiences, modalities, individuals, because we're all about making careful matches between seekers and guides and to optimize the outcome. And we know that this has been scientifically proven. I think Ohio State did a research last year around the importance of the match between the
And the effectiveness
the
of
journeyer and the
outcome.
practitioner,
Mhm.
and how effective that is. So yeah, that's kind of why we do this and why we have so much choice in our network.
All right, let's dig into you both as individuals.
Mm-hmm.
How did psychedelics become important for you?
Sure. Should I start?
Well, I just want to add one thing. It becomes important when you've been married for 30 years
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to, to continue to evolve as a couple. That's an important part of our combined story.
Yes.
I'll let you start. Yeah.
So it's really started with me. As I mentioned earlier, I dealt with major depression, anxiety, PTSD, panic attacks for a little over 30 years. And I tried everything under the sun, all the SSRIs, antidepressants out there, all the modalities.
Tirelessly. Yeah.
Eventually ended up doing, excuse me, TMS in 2019, and that was not helpful. And I had never done any psychedelics in my life, any drugs of any sort. But I started looking into what else was out there, and I very quickly stumbled on a variety of podcasts and research online around psychedelics,
Yours included.
yours included. And I researched for about a year. I listened to a lot of podcasts, and eventually got very convinced that this was something that I needed to try. So through my concierge skills, I found a highly skilled facilitator with whom I had a journey back in early 2020.
And let's add, we were in the heart of Ohio at the time.
Yeah.
This was partly during pandemic times, and in Ohio, which was really known as a psychedelic desert. So to find people who knew where to go to get these kinds of therapies was very challenging, more so than even now.
But fortunately, I found someone that was incredibly talented, with whom I had my first journey just before COVID started. And then the rest is history. I've had a lot more journeys since then. And what I found is my first journey was not, I wouldn't say I wasn't cured right after it, right, of everything that I was dealing with, but it showed me the landscape of my inside, my mind, my soul, my torments, all of it, and showed me the roadmap as to how to go about healing. And over the next few to several journeys after that, I worked through a lot of that material. And before my first journey, I stopped taking antidepressants and never started that again. So it's been a wonderful last 5 years. And as mentioned earlier, through a couple of journeys that I had, about 2 years in, I felt the call. I saw the call to help others with this, and I really didn't know what that meant. I'm not a therapist, I'm not in this space, but it quickly became. It was yet another message saying, you have the networking skills, the concierge skills, use that. And this is kind of how this adventure started. Susan, do you want to tell a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, unless you have questions.
Nico, where's your accent from?
Oh, I'm French originally.
I had a suspicion. Lovely. Lovely. It's the only question for this part, Susan. I'll have you jump in.
Okay, so my background is very different, and my path is interwoven with my husband's, but it's very different. So I have to go all the way back to very, very early years at age 7, when something in me knew that I wanted to learn how to dance. There was something about movement that stirred something in me, even at a very young age. And I told my parents, and they supported me in that. Little did they know how much that was going to cost them, because it's been a lifelong journey with movement. So they supported me all the way through, even my college years. And movement was my therapy through my rough times as a child. And so in my early childhood development, I had that as a way to express and release pent up emotions, or if I had had a conflict during that day socially or within my family unit, I had an outlet for it. And I like to tell people that you cannot leap through the air if you're holding on to a bunch of anger, and you have to let that go in order to fly. So I learned that, and that became my
medicine.
My medicine, yeah, and my knowing of who I was and how I related to people very much as an expressive, creative type. I'm sure brain development also was affected by me being very creative and artistic. And I followed that. That became my center, my self, my capital S self, was that connection through the movement. And that was my North Star. And it led me to finding this lovely individual. And we do believe that we have a connection. We knew early on, we felt a very strong connection to each other that probably goes back for other lifetimes. And I had my own bit of pain for a while. I had never known depression in my life. And I knew that my husband had some of that, but he was dealing with it on his own and he was able to kind of mask it quite a bit. And so I also didn't have any knowledge of the psychedelic space. I never used any type of medicines, molecules at any point in my life. I had the body, I had my instrument, I had movement, and that was my healing energy. But after I gave birth to our second child, I went through a period of postpartum that where I was just completely stricken with panic. I would say I was in a constant state of panic for about 3 to 4 months while raising two babies and having a husband that was struggling. Excuse me. And also, I ended up nearly having pneumonia and bulging disc in my low back. So, all that at the same time. This was my dark night of the soul moment. But coming through it and out the other side, I was able to look back and see how there were many gifts that I was given through that period of time. And this was all without psychedelics, by the way. So I, for the first time, the first gift was that I understood the pain and reflection that my husband had in his life for the first time, and so many others. When I was a child, I had the parents that told you, just buck up, buttercup, you got to power through, right? That was the generation's teachings down to me. And so I, for the first time, understood, well, maybe not. Maybe that's not how you deal and handle with these things, or how you connect with someone who is going through that kind of pain. And I had him who saw what I was going through and was able to support me in a way that he would want to be supported. So I learned that. I also went to doctors, conventional medicine, to try to get healing help. And they gave me Vicodin and Valium and sent me home. I even had one doctor who said, "Oh, no, you can't be having postpartum right now. It's too long after your delivery date. You're 5 months out." And he said, "Why don't you, when you feel that way, whatever is you're feeling, just put a piece of candy in your mouth?" And that was it. And so I went home, and for the first time in my life, I'm taking drugs and can't do anything. I'm laid out on the couch. He's having to do the laundry. I've got a cousin coming over trying to help us. And I can't be with my babies and do the things that I wanted to do or that I had done with our first child for the first time in my life. And I knew as a dancer, this is very important. I knew from that prep in my life that this was not the right path to healing. I needed to get moving. So we lived in San Francisco at the time, and Pilates studios were starting to pop up around town. I used to drive by one every day. And so I signed up for a private session, and I wanted to do it the right way. So I signed up with a teacher who had physical therapy background. And my very first hour with her one-on-one, I felt back in my body again. It was incredible. And I thought, I need more of this, less of the medicine, more of this. So because we didn't have a lot of money at the time, I thought the best way to do that is going to be to learn how to do this for myself. So because I was a dancer previously, I was able to sign up to get certified as a Pilates instructor. And I had an incredible experience and healed during that time. And the other gift that I came out with through that dark night of the soul was being able to then teach that to others who had pain and be able to relate to them and help them with debilitating pain. I've worked with stroke patients. I've worked with people pre and post surgery. I've worked with pre and postnatal mothers. I had a studio for a time, a yoga and Pilates studio, and also dance. And we worked at all age levels. And that was my way to give back and serve people on their healing journeys through movement practices. And yes, I've had concierge background at a higher administration level, but I was part of that project, and it was a lifestyle for us. So I also understood the importance of networking and finding the right people for top level experiences. And so now I'm going to jump to where my husband came to me and said, I think I want to do psychedelics. And I'm like, oh no. How about some yoga? How about some meditation, right? Which are things he had tried, but they just didn't reach. So, I love him and I wanted him to experience life in the way that I had experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And so I jumped in with him and started listening to your podcast and others. And we started doing a lot of research together, and we listened to one another. I had great fears. So I was sharing what I could with him, but I didn't want to hold him back. So I would go on Google and search for support groups for people like me. I am here in a supportive role for my husband and his healing journey, but I have fears. What's going to happen? Who is he going to become? How can I be there through that process with him to help the healing along?
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't find anything. I found only articles about integration for the journeyer, their experience and understand, but not about how is that affecting me, and so how can I show up authentically to help him fulfill the process. So my role here as a concierge alongside him and helping with the matching is very much about the importance of integration, but also preparation, and about having support throughout the entire process. It's very important that the people who are doing the journey have support before and as they come out, but also that we, as those who are at the support, also have support. So I would love to one day, and I know the vets are doing this. I've heard that the vets are starting to offer more support for the supporters of the journeyers.
Mm-hmm.
And that was an idea that I had a long time ago, that we need to bring not just integration circles, but why not model those for the supporters? Offer some support to the people that need to show up and tend to their own needs, but also be able to evolve with their loved ones.
Yeah. There's so much there. I want to echo. Go ahead.
I do want to add, I have touched the medicine since. I've had my own experiences, and again want to state that I'm on my own path. I'm not running into deep dive because I don't feel a need for that right now. I am learning to commune with the medicine in a very ritualistic way. So microdosing is what speaks to me right now, and I've done that with multiple medicines. In the same way that I relate to nature, I find it I'm a gardener, and I find it as a way to really live with the medicine, Let it speak to us. Listen. Most importantly, listen. Not tell the medicine what to do. Heal me. Right?
Yeah, sure.
Boss it around.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's lovely. Thanks for sharing all that. I don't know if Susan, this ever came across in the podcast or any episodes you listened to, but I had so much chronic pain in my past.
Oh, yeah.
As soon as I got out of my undergrad and started doing software work, my body started to fail.
Yeah.
Not fail. I think my nervous system was sending up alarms saying, hey, we're not ready for this. This isn't good.
Yeah.
Physical therapists, chiropractors, traditional Chinese medicine. One of my physicians told me I was going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life at age 23.
Oh,
Yeah.
No diagnosis, no nothing.
No.
Just, yeah, this is probably just going to get really bad for you and you can't walk anymore. I'm like, wow.
And that plants such a seed in your head. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think when psychedelics and MDMA came into my world in a real big way, was around dancing, was around
beautiful
fish and music, and like it was the movement and the drugs and the community that I think helped my pain go away, which I hadn't been able to find a way to clean it up before. So I just wanted to kind of
really
mirror my story against yours, because like movement and like embodiment, I think, are very key to our weirdly over cerebral culture.
Pain is the body's language. It is part of the way the body speaks to us. And it can start out so subtle. People that are not embodied, they don't even hear it. And then when they hear pain, they feel like fighting back, when you need to, again, listen to the pain, just like doing the journey work, right? It could be painful.
Yeah, and it's interesting once you start pursuing your passion. I was in IT for 25 years, and I had constant back pain, and just like you, Joe. I had my body was screaming at me constantly, and I have to say, for the past 2 years, I haven't had any. I've not gotten sick, maybe one cold. I mean, it's really how the body talks to you. I think you have to listen.
Yeah, and we've changed our lifestyle a lot too.
Yeah,
I love that. Yeah, it's important, and you're right. There is something about like living in certain levels of your truth that help the whole organism we're trying to maintain
it's what
here.
We're all meant to do, and I think I knew that at age 7 somehow. I think, and I really do believe that we all have that inner knowing at a very young age, and then we start getting these messages from the outside and from the world telling us, do this, do that. Here are your choices, right? Instead of allowing children to just feel that and nurture that. And I have an example for the moms out there that are listening. My daughter was dancing around the living room, and she was right about that age, 7. And she had put on a beautiful nightgown, and she had the music going, and just like these girls with Frozen now, right? They're dancing around. And I stopped her and I held her and I said, this right here, what you're feeling in this moment, trust that. Listen to that. Find that in your life for the rest of your life, and you will be on the right track.
I love that. I love that you made it like a really poignant moment in her memory, hopefully.
Because I saw myself in her. I wasn't telling her you need to be a dancer for the rest of your life. I was telling her that feeling that you're expressing right now. That is your truth. That is your calling. That's passion. And if we could all find that in our lives, I think it's in us. I really do believe that. It's in each one of us in different ways. It could be science. It could be being a doctor, a lawyer. We need all these people, right? But to do it with passion, that it comes from that place of truth deep inside you. And once you lose that, I think that's when we experience these ailments, this pain. I'm not a doctor, and I don't pretend to be. But, I'm speaking from my own experience and what I've seen in others, that like what he's doing now, for example, like what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a passion around service and serving others and helping humanity.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. So can you tell me a little bit more, Susan, what it was like to have Nico kind of drop that bomb on your
I would
on your
love
lap?
to. I would love to. Yes. It was really tough because I grew up during the war on drug movement, right? And my parents were very strict. My whole family, we were all, you be a good girl, follow what you're told, follow the law, so on and so forth. And I did. And I'm glad I did. I didn't get into trouble. I didn't, steer into dark places. And I had a focus. I had a passion. So I didn't want to harm that piece of myself that I had. So I took
Mm-hmm.
care of my body. I took care of the vessel. I stayed healthy. So when he came to me, that was a very scary thought that he's going to start taking these illegal substances, right? But very quickly, hearing about the MAP studies and, diving into books and documentaries, and thank goodness for the podcast and internet, we found good sources that really supported this as it felt like the last hope. It really did. I mean, I could see in him just, I hope this is going to work because I don't know what else is possible. What if it's worked for all these people, but it's not going to work for me, right?
It's
Yeah,
hard.
yeah, I had a lot of that, and I was never suicidal. That was never my issue. But I was always wearing this cloak of depression my entire life, and sometimes it would be high depression, sometimes it would be just like baseline. But what it was really was, it manifested itself with just mostly a gloomy state and an absence of emotions, good or bad. So that's, you reach your midlife crisis age, like I did at the time. I was turning 50 and realize, what am I doing, right? And do I want to live the rest of my days in that same state, or is there something you can do about it?
And the other thing is that I want to say that was very top of mind, first and foremost, really, because it wasn't about the drugs at that point, because I understood the research. We saw results. It was doing it safely,
Yeah.
not getting yourself into a situation where you're not being guided properly, or you don't have the support afterwards, because I didn't know what was going to happen. I had no clue. I was not part of a community. So
Yeah.
that was my main concern, really.
We were, and we still are to some extent, very risk adverse. So that's really
Yeah.
our whole
Oh,
approach is around risk reduction, whatever we do. And yeah,
We believe in the therapeutic approach, the therapeutic model.
it's funny. A guy that we worked with yesterday was telling us, I don't want to call it harm reduction. I want to call it risk reduction. And I really like that, because if you say harm reduction, that means it implies that there is harm that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not really, most of the time, it's not really the case. It's eliminating the risk or reducing the risk as much as you can around doing this work.
Yeah, Professor Carl Hart from Columbia spent a lot of time on that particular discussion, because is it the case that mushrooms are harmful? I think the answer is a resounding no.
Right.
And Carl Hart does this actually with a lot of drugs. So, Susan, to your point earlier, we're $1 trillion in, and I think 50 years into the war on drugs. It's just what the U.S. has spent. So
Yeah.
we're living through a lot of propaganda. We have to relearn how to navigate all these things, and
Yeah.
it's hard. Like, cultural
And
programming is difficult.
a lot of people are putting themselves out there and as, in a way, guinea pigs, right? Because the drive is so intense. There's so much pain. There's so much hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And the path that they've been set on with the science that we have and the laws that we have unfortunately in some ways compounded or prolonged that pain. So
Hmm.
people are having to look for alternatives because that's not a way to live. We can't keep going like that.
Right. Yeah, we do. Yeah, it's interesting, right? I've been thinking about human history a lot lately. I keep studying Greece and Rome and,
Mm.
the more traditional cultures. And I'm wondering what's missing. And it seems to be something changed at around the point of the Industrial Revolution and probably even earlier with, more institutionalized agriculture and property rights and all these things. And like, what was it that really shifted our psyche to this point where we're so sick now? And I think
Well,
like it's not really all that controversial to say, right? Like a lot of us just aren't doing well in this day and age.
I
And
think
mhm,
I just want to say it can go so much further back, and I think the indigenous wisdom teaches us that connecting with nature or disconnecting with nature.
Yeah, and community, I think, as well, right? I think
Yeah.
once you enter the industrial age, people started going to work in factories, in businesses, leaving the homestead, leaving their community, and being, separated from that. I think that has a lot to do with the separation from other humans, the lack of networking, the lack of community. Yeah,
mhm,
There's,
yeah,
don't you see a coming back to that in
yeah,
pockets, right? Yeah.
in a big way. And it's I think I probably saw the big transition in more more widespread in the psychedelic space. Yeah, 3 years ago roughly. Let's talk more about community as healing, community as the
Yeah.
thing we need.
yeah.
But a lot of people need to have these experiences sometimes to have that realization that, oh, I'm actually missing something huge in my world.
Oh,
And
absolutely, Joe.
mhm,
My biggest work in this space has been group work.
Mm.
mm,
After I've done a couple of years of one-on-one journey work, I was invited into a men's group, um, and another one since then. And the aspects of men getting together and crying together and opening their hearts and hugging and all of this, and those are everyday life men. Those are not hippie or woo or anything like that. This is people that are really fine, looking for that connection. And now we have an amazing group of 50 men that are talking to each other every day online and
mm,
sharing fires in the backyard and inviting each other and supporting each other. And it's just
Yeah.
and those this all came with this community built around, initially around medicine work, and then now it's outside of the medicine work and growing.
Yeah. They took integration work to the next level and
Hmm.
brought it
mm,
in, wove it into their lives. And they have a community that is
Mm.
sustainable now outside of the medicine space, outside of just meeting up once a month on an integration circle.
In fact, one of them is
He's
next
right
to
next
is
door to us.
just camped his RV next to us last night, and he's visiting us for a couple of days. So
Yeah.
yeah.
that's outstanding. I've
Hmm.
since about 2003 I've been part of this breathwork community, and it's been gorgeous. And like
Mm.
people, it's not just breathwork, right? It's people coming in and out of breathwork,
Mhm.
psychedelics and different interesting experiential psychotherapies, exploratory things, and just having that kind of physical location even, and or just knowing that the community is there if you need to call somebody. It's just
Yeah.
brilliant. I
Oh
started
yeah.
doing this recently with my Burning Man community. We check in weekly, and
Hmm.
it's so good to have
Yeah.
that kind of regular check in with a small group of people. And you understand each other and what each other's going through. And yeah, it's just an amazing process.
Yeah, it's a little bit like AA, but not for alcoholics, right? I mean, you get together, you pour your heart out, you get that relief that you may not be able to get at home or with your friends, with people that are completely genuine and open and see you or hear you and understand you, it's really magical. But I have Susan at home, so I'm not that person, of course. But
and as a woman, seeing men show up for each other in that way is really, really nice. It's really, really good to see. It gives me hope for the future fathers in the world, for the future husbands in the world, for the women that get to enjoy a man who shows up emotionally in your life and can talk about deep things. Yeah, and it takes a lot of courage to be that kind of man in today's world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about this concept. Like, let me get the question together here. Couples often don't do this work together, right? Often what happens is somebody goes kind of deep down this healing path. We hear about this in the veteran communities a lot, right?
Yeah.
Like somebody starts healing, but the spouse or partner is just back at home, not necessarily having similar support or healing, right? And or like growth trajectory of any substantial kind, and there can be like a sort of healing apart, like a growing apart / healing apart that can happen. Like, have you seen anything like that, and what do you think might be able to help with that?
I think so our first when we vet our clients, what we call them seekers, for journey work, one of the questions and one of the points of consideration is whether they have any support at home, whether the person they live with, whether it's their spouse or partner or family member, are fully supportive of that work. And many of our guides, if not probably most of them, ask the same questions, because that trouble happens when that doesn't exist. And for us, it's definitely a yellow flag and maybe a red flag if somebody has no support at home. And then beyond that, I think what Susan was talking about earlier, do you want to, about the allied circles? Or our desires to do that?
Yeah, we came up with this concept. He was going to his integration circles, and it was wonderful. And I thought, what a great model, and similar to the AA model, right? And I said, why couldn't somebody like me, who's supporting you through this process, have my own circle modeled after that, with a facilitator of these medicines who can really explain and share stories and answer the kind of questions that would come up for the support group.
Because the spouse has a lot. In the case of Susan, I'm going to speak for you right now. She had fears, right? Legitimate fears about what was going to happen with me and how I was going to change. And but because she loves me and she didn't want to mess with my process, she kept it for herself. But she still had those questions, and she was researching online and maybe asking other people. But she didn't feel like so open to ask me all these questions, which some of them could be very hard questions. Not all at once, anyway, right?
It was. I don't support anybody hiding their feelings or pushing down, your own inner thoughts and fears. I live in truth. I'm very honest and even confrontational at times to, speak my truth. But I knew that I couldn't just dump that on him, make it all about me. This was a time for me to let him step forward, for both of us to heal, for us to heal in this experience. Now, I've gained so much more than I ever thought I would, because I'm showing up. I'm watching, I'm listening, I'm asking questions, and he's supporting me too. It takes two, right? But I didn't want to hijack his experience because he was too worried about me and how I felt. So we talked through it, but there were times I was like, I'm not going to talk about that right now. I had to process some of those feelings on my own. And a lot of it was about just trusting the process, right? You don't know what you know or what you don't know until you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there was some of that I had to just wait and see, right? But he was doing the same thing. So I was
Yeah.
okay with that.
But we have many people that live in couples where one of the usually the man in my case, because I'm part of men's groups, start doing this work, um, and I think it's a mix whether the partner joins in or not. Sometimes they do, and we've seen many examples of them not doing it, but yet supporting the process, right? And this is kind of when it works. If the spouse is on board,
Mm-hmm.
whether they do it or not, it's okay, right? It's fine. Nobody's pushing anyone to do medicine work. If but the
Yeah.
support level is very important.
Yeah, I join with him when he meets in his men's groups if they have a social gathering or so. We'll have bonfires, things like that. And I'm so excited to meet the wives. And then they're not all there. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but you just wonder, how they're feeling. How are they coping? Are they getting support that they need? Like what I was looking for. I had a strong faith, a strong sense of self. I had my own practices that I could rely on as a way to regulate my own nervous system through this process. I know a lot of people don't have that. So,
Well, yeah,
you don't have to do medicine in order to be part of the medicine community. Some may think otherwise. I've heard both sides. But for the most part, people respect that I follow my truth and I'm living my path. But I'm still open to the process and I'm supportive of these modalities as in addition to many, many other modalities like breath work, like you just spoke about. Not everybody is in a place where they should take these drugs. They may not be ready. Um, they may have some weaning to do off of medications. They may not have a guide yet. Um, so there are other things that you can partake in. There are other great teachers out there who haven't done medicine and some who have. I would like to see more of a weaving together over time of the non-medicine, non-psychedelic modalities and arts and the medicine community.
Yeah, one of my hopes is that people can use these different practices to get away from having to use monthly.
Yeah.
You see a lot of these folks that potentially once a month is way too much for a lot of
oh yeah,
people.
Yeah.
for sure.
And it's
Mhm.
really common in a lot of circles, including
Yeah,
ayahuasca groups and
yeah,
different mushroom groups, right? So how are we getting embodied? What is the movement practice or art practice or community practice that's really helping? And I love that you're thinking about that.
Thank you.
yeah. And I think I learned from one of my great guides that this type of work comes in seasons, and sometimes some people often come to him and say, "Oh, I just had a journey 2 weeks ago. Can I have another one this weekend, or is it okay?" And his take on it is, sometimes this stuff is going to happen. You're going to be going through a period of time when you're going to be doing medicine more often. It's like a season. This will pass, and we see a lot of even within our guides network as we have deep conversations with them, but also our seeker. We see a lot of people going through these periods of times when they do a lot of medicine, and then it tend to self-regulate itself over time, and then they come back into realizing that, oh, I'm doing all this stuff, but I'm not integrating my lesson from 27 journeys back, and so they stop or they slow down and they start integrating. We've seen a lot of that.
Right. Um, so I'm curious about your matchmaking process. This is
Yeah.
really curious to me because it's there's got to be a lot of art to it.
Yeah.
People are so different and have so many different needs, right? How do you all approach that?
Yeah,
This
so
is why.
this is why we do it.
What you just said.
It's more of an art than a science. Of course, there is a lot of
Education.
yeah. We 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 go through an extensive intake process with our seekers, as well as an hour-long Zoom call to get to know them and understand them and get to know them as persons. You know, who's behind that screen. And
After they've done an assessment and
yeah.
yeah.
And what really matters to us is the intangible, is the life stories, the little stories, the thoughts, the way they speak, where they are, their challenges,
Their hopes.
and more often than not, Joe, we pick up on those things and we're able to say we have the perfect couple guide for that person because of their backstory, their background, and that's because we spend a lot of time with our guides, vetting them, and we go very deep with who they are, what was their life story, what was their challenges, um, and passions and all of it, right? And so, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's once you pass the main categories of that I won't spell out here, but pretty obvious. It becomes an art. It becomes oh yeah, that's the right guy for that person. Yeah, and
Cool.
so far it's been right on. I mean, and the other beauty of it is
we have each other.
We have each other, and then
off of.
we interview everybody together. So far, and so we turn to each other after the call and say, okay, what do you think? And 90% of the time it's the same names and the same matches, so it's really cool.
Yeah, we do our due diligence. We feel if we started the business just by going to the network of guides, qualified, very experienced guides, and listening to them, listening to their stories. We call it beyond the bio. We go way beyond just their credentials, go all the way to their early childhood and what their traumas were and what led them to their medicine, and how have they come out through that process. Are they completely through the process? And you can tell. I mean, you can tell who's being very vulnerable with us, sharing a lot of detail. If they jump right to, well, and I took this class, we're like, whoa. Back up. If you care to share, can you tell us more about your own life story?
The why. Why are you doing this today? What was the trajectory that made you become that wonderful guide today? There's a reason, and often a wounded healer reason, right? And there's a reason why they're here, and that's what we want to know. The credentials are fantastic, sure. We all know that, and we can get a copy of those. It's the it's the soul level conversation. Yeah.
And you see traits throughout talking to all these guides that become constants. This was a learning experience for them. This was critical. This is how they assess working with an individual. They have to feel a connection for that space to be safe, and for them to go to the places that individual's going to be going to. One of the questions that I love the most that we ask is, what was your most challenging experience as a guide? Tell us about it, and tell us what you learned from it and how you've adapted since. And I tell you, they've all got a story,
or many stories,
and many are very similar. That's something that's very unique to us, I think, is because we've interviewed so many guides so in depth. We have this wealth of knowledge around guide work and experiences that have happened,
to the point that now many come to us and say, okay, for advice or counsel, right, about how what are you learning out there, what's going on, to kind of inform them on how, if they need to make any changes in their practice.
We don't
for
tell them
example.
how to do their
No, we don't,
practice,
but
but we
we're
know
happy
of
to share.
instances that other guides have had that were great learning instances.
You still with us, Joe?
So, yeah, and many of these guides are in silos. You know, they may have their cohorts, but they may be in a particular region. We find the guides on the West Coast can be very uniquely different from guides on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
Those guides in the DC area, very different from guides on the West Coast, but that comes from mentorship, apprenticeship, lineages that have been passed on in a region,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we've had a really incredible learning opportunity by speaking with so many guides so in depth, and then visiting with them in person, being in space with them, energetically feeling them, feeling their presence, how they sit with us, um, is an important part of the matching process as well.
I love this concept of like regional differences or like localized kind of echo chambers, which is fascinating to me.
Oh, it's
Like
incredible.
Oh yeah.
yeah, like family member of mine did a kind of like musicology research project tracking kind of like Irish and French immigrants and like how the music changed through Appalachia all the way from like the Canadian Atlantic provinces to New Orleans. Fascinating.
Interesting.
And there's something similar here where it's like somebody seeded some ideas in like Louisville, Kentucky, and it like spread in like a plus 100-mile radius. And sometimes there's like overlapping
Mm-hmm.
regions and
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
practices, and sometimes not. Like it's a
you
really
hear dialects. I mean, you see it everywhere. Cultures, fashion trends. You know, it's how we are as human beings. We pass information, we
Yeah.
observe, we learn.
It's funny for us to say, oh yeah, so you that guy in DC, but you kind of know from talking to them and the kind of medicines they use and the protocols. Oh, okay, so you must have been taught under that
Yeah.
lineage or that person, and if it's West Coast, East Coast, or something, or South America or something. It's really interesting.
And
Yeah,
medicines that are used too, right? And the way that they use them
yeah.
can be very similar.
So
Yeah, it's
do you stay in
fascinating.
touch, Susan and Nico, with the clients and the practitioners pretty regularly to make sure quality is up to snuff for you?
Yeah,
Great
absolutely. It's
question.
very important for us. So after so we don't get involved into once we make the connection between the guide and the seeker. This is where we stop in terms of we don't know what happens after that. Specifically, we just ask the guide to let us know if there's a journey planned because we want to know the date of that so we can send a survey after that. So we always send a survey to both the seeker and the guide after the first journey. To kind of so it's not for us to get into the detail of the work that was done, but more of from a quality standpoint. Was it safe? Was that the right match? Would you go back and see that person? Kind of do an NPS score around it. Would you recommend that guide to your friends and family? Kind of thing, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, just to make sure we're not missing something. Something good happens that we need to be aware of. And I want to go back to another important part of the match in our process is we give at least two guides as a match. And like Nico said, we check on each other. And I'll tell you 99.9% of the time, we're thinking of the same people by the time we get off our vetting call with the seeker. But we come up with two matches, and that gives the seeker that first opportunity to take agency in their choices going forward. So that's where we get to step out. If either the guide or the seeker still don't feel that there's a match there, and that's a very, very, as we've learned from talking to our guides, an important part is not just serving medicine because you feel sorry for somebody or they're, you know, telling you they really want to work with you. If you don't feel intuitively right about it, to say no. And we've told the guides, please send them back to us and we'll give them another option. So
Yeah, so we give up to 4 options, two and two, but we've never had to go more than 2 anyway. But that's they always know that it's their choice to come back to us if they don't feel a connection with the 2 matches that we give them.
yeah, and if after say 4 guides have been offered as matches don't work out,
It's
we
more of
think
a
maybe we shouldn't be matching you at this point. And the other important thing that we've told our guides is your intake process, the way you go about operating with your seekers, should remain intact. We are not here to supplement or substitute for their intake process, their preparation process. We are an addition to, as a first line of vetting and reaching out.
We just provide them qualified matches, and that's our role.
Yeah, that's amazing. I really love the level of care and dedication, and there's a lack right now of kind of accountability of facilitators, and what I'm seeing here is that this is now a way of imposing some sort of accountability, like because of our legal status, like how do we do this? And it's through networks, and you've developed a network, and I really appreciate that about what you're up to.
Well, and it all started with him finding the right guide, because that guide led us into the network.
Unfortunately, the first guy that I got was so amazing, and I'm not just saying that because connection and everything, but once I started even looking at other guides and starting building business, I realized how amazing she was. But from that first connection, I started connecting to other amazing guides, and that's kind of how we built our network so far. Is almost not entirely, but very much word of mouth, and bringing people into the fold that are really outstanding people, outstanding guides.
Yeah, and one of the questions we ask ourselves when we vet a guide before deciding to bring them on to the network is, would we feel comfortable sending our children there? Would they be safe enough? And not to say that every guide is right for the right person. Again, there's that connection that needs to happen. There are many, many different ways of experiences and space to be held. There's such a spectrum. But is the safety there? That's a question we ask ourselves.
And the skill and the safety to address whatever our child would need in that,
Yeah, that's brilliant. I just I'm childless, and I had that recent thought lately about like how do I relate to this? And I was like, I guess with my dog. Would I trust them with my dog?
Would you like us to match your dog, Joe?
Not yet, but
I want to say some of our guides have pets as part of the process that are just amazing. Amazing. And they get clientele who want to have that kind of an experience. So these are things that we learn about the guides.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, I had hopes to develop her into a psychedelic therapy dog, like actually kind of like make the therapy dog standard, and then like an additional one on top of that. Like, is there something really different here? I don't know what the answer is, but I find it an interesting idea. If anybody wants it, feel free. I don't think this is the dog for it.
Yeah, I know these animals haven't been trained. They just seem to come to it naturally.
And stay there. Yeah. We hear all these stories of the dog will come and lie down next to the journeyer and stay there for 6 hours, not moving, and just like energy is amazing.
And people who say that, the seekers who say that made all the difference, that animal was a critical part of their process.
So how can people get in touch with you all to see if they're a good fit for your program?
JourneyŌM.life. So journey, like a journey, om.life is our website, and that's the best way. We also have JourneyŌM.life on Instagram. I encourage people to come and check us out, join, and then that's the best way. And then we have a quick assessment on the website, see if you are a good candidate for what we do, and then off to the races.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And Hope we can do more here together. It sounds like a really cool thing
Uh,
that you all have going, and I can't wait to learn more about it and
Yeah,
Thank
get
happy
to know
to do
you both a
so.
you.
little more.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was great to be with you today, Joe.
Yeah, and thank you to all the listeners, and we wish wellness for everybody. And
And much healing.
yeah,
Yeah.
All right. Until next time, thank you both.
you've been great. We love you, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you.